Now, as I said, I like to code small. I don't want to have a ton of code out there without having tested it. And I've already done more code than I'm really comfortable in testing this. But I kind of had to get it started. So what I want to do here is let me start with just a little test code. System.out.println return names. And this is the work we're going to do later. And then system.out.println return places. And what that means is, and I got to do a break inside of here to just clean it up a little bit. My case statement. Otherwise, it'll just fall through and it'll print both of them. All right. So once we get the request in, we'll know we sort of kind of did something. We're not actually returning anything at this point. We're not doing the full complete code, but let's test it out. Let's go through and get our client started. So new, and then we're going to do other. So we're going to come into our GUI, Swing GUI forms inside of here. And let's go ahead and build our JFrame form to get started inside here. We'll go build a GUI. So this is our client GUI going on. Now, for the client GUI, it's up to you what you want to build here. You have a couple different data types that are coming in. I'm going to build a really rock solid simple GUI to get started with, and you can make much more robust if you want to. So the one button, I'll say get names, and the other one I'll say get places. All right, and again, what names and places are is somewhat important, as unimportant as we're going to see here in a minute. And all I'm going to use inside of here is I'm going to use a text area as my demonstration spot inside here. Make a big text area. And so I want to change the variable name of this text area to be output area, just something nice and generic. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the names of this to be names button, and this one to be places button. That's just going to help me keep my code straight a little bit. So there's my GUI to get started with. So I'm going to double click the names button to get started here so we can do some work in here. So there's a bunch of ways you can build this client code. One of the patterns is when you start up a client, I could have a perpetual connection to the server. Open it up, and I always have it there. And I open up the socket, it's always there, which is a huge waste of bandwidth and network resources, but makes it quicker. Your responses are slightly quicker because I don't have to open up a new connection each time. The way we're going to code it here is I'm just going to build a socket connection each and every single time I press a button. Open up a new connection, go get some data, and then close it again. All right, so that is unnoticeably slower than opening up to begin with, but certainly it's going to make our code a lot easier, especially working in the pre-made GUI inside here. We don't have to deal with attributes of the GUI class and things like that. All right, so I create a new socket here, and I need to be able to give it localhost and the same port number, which we did was 67, I think, inside of that. Now, the other side of this is we have to deal with the try catch ourselves now instead of just being able to throw it, because when something goes wrong, then it's our problem. And so what we want to do just to make sure we can see that, do a jOptionPage.show message dialog to be able to give the message unable to contact server. So we can just give our GUI users some idea that something went wrong, and then we get the details from the log message inside of here. So that's perfectly fine. So we go off and we open a socket. Exact same structures we had inside of our server now. So we have an output and an input. We're going to send a request, we're going to receive something back. So I can just copy these and throw these lines inside of here. I just automatically let it do the imports, and I'm going to switch these two lines because we're going to start with the output, and then we're going to get the input back from there. So, input and output. Now we can create an object to send over. So what do we need? We need a data request. So we have a data request object, which is the class we just created a little bit ago, the username, password, and everything else. We're not actually doing anything with the username, password. We just wanted to show you that we can do more complicated objects because you might need to send some extra information someday. So this is my request, and this can be a new data request object, and then request.set data type, data request dot. Let's ask for names because we're the name button. So since we're the name button, we're going to ask for names. And now we need to send that over to there, out.write object request. Take that request object, and then don't forget to flush. Always flush after you deposit an object out there. And then we're done, so I can say socket.close. All right, so that is the work we need to do. We'll come back and we'll receive something in a minute. We're going to start with this little bit of simple code. So now if we run, we start our server, and we didn't put any messages out there, so it didn't help us inside of there. But then we can go to our client, we can run our client, and that's going to pop something up here. And you can see there's our client. Now our places button doesn't do anything. If I press our names button, it's hanging. Oh, unable to contact server. So something bad happened. Unknown host local. I spelled localhost wrong. Okay, well now we know our error handling works well, because we can see it popped up an error instead of there. So I can fix this. I can say local, host. There, I can spell localhost properly. Did that kill my whole GUI? Nope, it did not. The GUI's still up and running. Now I can close the GUI out myself. I can run it again. I fixed my code. My server's still running. It doesn't care. All right, I run it again, and I say get names. Oh, unable to contact server. Oh, there! Look at that. So my server's still running. I got to write aborted exception, not serialized exception. Okay, and then I think that did stop that as well because it got an exception, and then I got the same exception on the client, not serialized exception, not serializable exception. So remember in our lecture, we talked about when we create this data request, by default this object is secure. It cannot be sent across the internet. So like this lecture, it's serialized because I've taken it, I've uploaded it to the internet. Now you can download it and you can save it and you can do whatever you want to with this file. I'm okay with that. I had no trouble with that. But that's because I did the Java equivalent of saying this must implement serializable. Control space implements, serializable. Control space on that other. So you can see java.io.serializable. If I do implements serializable, and again, you got to remember to do implements. Notice when I had implement, it didn't work. I had to put the S inside of there. So I say implements serializable. Well, now this guy is ready to go. This guy should be able to work properly inside of my solution as well. So let me run my server again. So my server should be up and running. And I can run my client again. I bring this over here and I say get names. It's hanging. That was the previous one. Oh, there you go, return names. Yeah, so that's good. It did it twice. So part of the issue inside of there is, sorry, I'm going to close this out. I have a couple of these up now and running. So when I hit return names, I can keep doing it over and over again because it's a GUI. It's going to keep up running. But now I'm returning names each time. That now proves out what's happening on my server. Now, if I want to test places, the quick and easy test I can do on places, change names to be places right here. I can run my GUI again. I don't need to rerun the server. Server's up and running. I can run my GUI again. I can hit get names, and then my server, it says return places. So now I have an object that allows me to communicate from my GUI client to my server in order to be able to make this communication happening back and forth. So I don't want to say easy because it's not easy. It takes a little bit of work. The biggest amount of work it's doing is the planning, the communication back and forth. I've got to plan on the server, how do I request the different types of data do I want? And then the client, I have to create that request appropriately and send it over using the object stuff we saw in the first set of demonstrations before, the 1.5.x demonstrations. All right, so now we're well positioned. Now we can go and expand this out a little bit. Now we can find ways to return data because we have an object mechanism to make that happen. So we're going to pause here, let you play with this, see if you can get your request and your GUI up and running. It'll probably take you more than 10 minutes to make that happen. So take some time, make that happen, and then come back and we'll do the next phase from there.